Good morning. I want to thank you for joining us today at Batavia Counselors Collaboration Town Hall. Our organization was founded in response to Restore Illinois. As local communities, we're looking for an appropriate health care approach for safely reopening our communities and finding ways to organize mental health services in the community. Our organization was founded to explore the possibilities of providing mental health resources to those who might be having undue stress because of COVID-19. As members of the collaboration worked with the Batavia Chamber of Commerce to explore the possibilities of how best to support our health concerns during COVID, our activities have included inviting social, governmental, religious, and educational leaders to hear about their responses to the COVID and what they saw as struggles and needs to be addressed. This collaboration began to organize itself to devote communications through marketing of printed material, social media, to provide access to some of the health resources that existed in the community. In late April of 2020, the confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Kane County were 1,460 with 46 deaths. Currently, it is at 14,278 with 325 deaths. So we are here today to utilize the opportunity to address areas of concern that we heard in our conversations with the many agencies, and to provide you an opportunity to hear from us ideas and aspects that might help you as you are trying to deal with COVID-19. Our participants in the town hall today are Brent Horlock, owner of Horlock Therapeutic Counseling; Jamie Cruz, CEO and psychotherapist of J. Cruz Therapy Services; Natasha Clark, Director of Educational Services and Clinical Therapist at the Suicide Prevention Services of America; myself, Maria Kuhn, owner of Kuhn Counseling Center. Today, we have asked Margaret, President and CEO of the Batavia Chamber of Commerce, to be our moderator. Margaret?
Thank you, Maria. I'm very pleased to be able to participate in this forum with you today. I appreciate how the Batavia Counselors Collaboration is helping the individuals in our community during this crisis. So let's get started. Our first question to the counselors is, how has the COVID-19 changed our lives? Brent, would you like to start?
Certainly. Thank you, Margaret, and certainly thank you, Maria, for being the kind of the brain work and getting us all organized and together. And so it's been certainly a pleasure to be a part of this group. You know, effective March 13th of this year, things drastically changed. We had gone from a kind of a free society and moving around as much as we possibly could to one that was immediately put into a holding pattern. We had gone from a society of can to a society of can't. And over that 7-month time period, it's been pretty consistent what I've heard from folks that I've known personally as well as professionally. This is what I can no longer do. And one of the things that I think is important, I think that we all know is important, is to be focused on what we can do. And over these last several months, I've seen some very cool things. And whether it be scavenger hunts to find things in people's front windows, artwork on sidewalks or on the downtown windows of Batavia done by our youth, birthday celebrations, whether they be developed by the community and including squad cars and or just friends and family driving by and honking horns. It has been a new and exciting way of celebrating a birthday. I've seen a lot more people out and about. The number of people that I've seen biking, walking their dogs, or walking with families has certainly increased. And it certainly has been a focus on what we can do. And certainly part of why we're here today is to focus on all that we can do to help deal with the emotional and anxiety sides of COVID-19.
Jamie, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone, again, for being here. This is a really important message because, as in my practice, I see a lot of people who are struggling with the effects that COVID has had on their families and their loved ones and everyone in the community. One of the things that has hit home in my practice and personally for me with COVID-19 is this dramatic change of being home. As Brent said, we've had a lot of opportunity to be present with ourselves and be present with our family. And sometimes we know that that's not always the best situation. So we're kind of stuck in this kind of limbo land. We've had the opportunity in the past to be able to go and do things, go to movies, go to parks, go shopping, go out to eat, many distractions. Work is one thing that we, I think, used to thrust ourselves into to distract ourselves, but sometimes work is slowed down or sometimes it's even gotten worse. But the point is we've had many distractions, and this time has allowed us to be home and present. And sometimes that's also always not a great thing. We're stuck with our thoughts at that point. We have limited distractions. So a lot of what I've seen is a lot of contemplative work being done with individuals, meaning here I am, I don't have anywhere else to go. This is where my life is. I don't really like it. And it's caused us to question and caused us to change some things, which has all been really good, but also really difficult to do. So with COVID, it's not always just about not being able to do things. It's also been a time for self-reflection.
Thank you, Jamie. Natasha, do you have something to add?
Sure. I'm really glad to be here and join everyone today. And I think this is an incredible effort. So thank you for including us, Suicide Prevention Services in Batavia. I'd like to add, really, everyone has addressed things that we're seeing at our agency as well. And I'm really getting the sense from not just my own personal experience, but from everyone professionally, personally, people coming into our agency, and then on a national level as well, we pick that up. But there is really what I would say is a new level of exhaustion. There's good research out that really demonstrates how tiring it is, how taxing it is for our brains to have to shift and constantly make new decisions. So once our brain is in the mode of making a decision, typically we need some rest, recuperation time. But this crisis is sustained. So it's not just a one-time crisis and we're moving on. This is sustained. Our brains are having to make decisions that we haven't had to make in the past. And additionally, these are choices we're making that are forced upon us. The choice to have or not have COVID is not a choice. How we respond to that also may not be a choice. So the level of exhaustion is huge. And I think a lot of times we don't notice that explicitly. So that's a major change, sustained exhaustion for this long period of time. And we're going into the winter. But as I hear all the positives, or the way that humans stretch brains, is that we're having to recalibrate. So what's worked in the past may not be working now. We have had to, each of us, little ones, medium, big, we've had to recalibrate and become more self-sufficient. We've also needed to figure out new ways to reach out and communicate and stay connected. So it's demanding of us new ways of experiencing the world, being self-sufficient, at the same time as dealing with that level of exhaustion. So it really has changed us. COVID-19, I fully believe, has changed us.
I agree. Thank you, Natasha. Maria, do you have a comment?
A number of years ago, I had the opportunity to listen to Dr. Jessica Potter, a university professor out of Loyola University, and she talked about the need for the human being to have physical contact every day. And she said, you know, if you really want to be emotionally healthy, you have to have a good 4 hugs a day. Now, I want to talk to the huggers in the room, because this has been, for me personally, and me as a grandmother, and me even as a clinician, one of the hardest things we've had to do, this social distancing, to not be able to do those things that we would naturally do. And so, yes, it's been a challenge. If you follow the advice, and this kind of touching is a shedding event, and it seems even with masks on, it's not safe. It's not something we can do. And so learning ways to address and find our emotional needs in the absence of that which was that health event will become very, very important for us. And so that's what I would encourage you to begin to think about, is being creative about these limitations and finding ways that make sense. And one delightful story that I saw that has stayed with me is this family wanted to celebrate their parents' anniversary. And so they picked a parking lot. How many of us have seen people in parking lots having coffee breaks in their cars? And so they built this big thing, and it looks like they had a shower curtain on it. And what they did was, once that curtain was up, each grandparent and the daughter and the children, everybody gave each other a hug and celebrated that anniversary. We have to find creative ways. We can't wait and think that this will be passing us by based on the experts. Another marvelous addition is I had the occasion to stop at a store for the dog patch. And while I was there, I noticed the cages were empty. And I thought, oh yeah, with the COVID, they probably got rid of the dogs. And the guy said, no, that's exactly not what's happening. On Wednesday, we fill the cages with rescue dogs. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, people come and look at those dogs. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're standing outside the door. And by noon, every dog will be gone. We seem to realize that dogs can be that connector to us and can give that some of what we're giving up with human touch. So
those are great stories. That's great. Thank you. We'll move along. As the crisis continues, domestic abuse, anxiety, depression, and social isolation have all significantly risen. What coping strategies do you think could help these individuals and families? Jamie, would you like to start?
Sure. You're right. Being what we just kind of talked about, being all at home at once, it sometimes becomes just extremely overwhelming for us. And I can understand and attest to having the list of things to do and learning to cope with the littles, trying to do e-learning, learning to cope with spouses working from home. Those of us who maybe have even little infants, trying to manage working from home and caring for a little infant or a little toddler. It could be really overwhelming. And how we can get money on the table if those of us are laid off or not working right now. All of those stressors compile, and our brains, like Natasha said, it doesn't function very well under stress. So one of the things that I have encouraged people to do is to try and just really honor the stress. That we can't push it away. We can't pretend that it's not there anymore through the distractions anymore. So we have to learn to honor it and accept it and hold it for really what it is and not minimize it. Wherever you're feeling the stress, oftentimes I will myself just put my hand on my heart or instruct my clients to put their hand on their heart. This is honoring thyself. This is honoring what I'm going through, and just slowly breathing into that and just being aware of the breath, breathing in and breathing out through the nose, and maybe taking a pause. And in those breaths and in that awareness, it just allows us to settle, and it allows us to really hold that emotion. And as we're little, when we're parents, right, when our child comes up to us and they're hurt, we often say, we can't take the pain away, but we hold them and we honor their pain. And we're just learning to take care of ourselves in this time like we do our little child. Often in an airplane, what do we hear first? We hear, put that oxygen mask on yourself before you could put that oxygen mask on other people. And it's so true, because if we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't honor ourselves and learn how to manage some of the stress, we can never do it for anybody else. It's going to be half-hearted, and we can't give ourselves fully to anyone else. So really in this time during this overwhelming period is really just learning to listen to you, listen to what you need, and maybe give yourself that space 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and ask yourself, okay, what is it that I need today? And really just sitting with that and maybe writing a list before you move through the day. Prioritize what you need to get done. It will help you set up that day for hopefully success instead of feeling that overwhelm feeling.
Thank you, Jamie. Natasha, do you have a comment?
Yes, absolutely. Suicide prevention services, we deal with crisis all the time, and we help those coming to us in crisis. So crisis is our thing. However, sustained crisis hitting us all is different. And yet it's not so different. So here's where we would take a step and say, okay, crisis, even if it's sustained, comes in waves. There are waves, or you can come up with a visual to how you want to see it. And there are little breaks in between, and they may be very small. So it might be a 5-minute break where it's just a bit of ease and you can breathe for that 5 minutes. And during that time, preparing in advance, seeing that, oh, it does come in waves. So the next round it comes, I'm going to take advantage of those 5 minutes. I might take the time to breathe, as Jamie mentioned, which is excellent. We might make a list, as Jamie mentioned. All those things are excellent. We also encourage people to really pay attention to the basics. So nutrition, making sure our bodies get something inside us at intervals throughout the day. Our brains and the rest of us do not function with low blood sugar or wonky blood sugar. And we sometimes forget those things. We need a sleep, really a priority right now, and a priority during crisis. So thinking on different ways that can be incorporated during even naps in the afternoon, whenever you can hit those. Fresh air, some way to get the body moving, depending on people's abilities. You know, sometimes people just do it in their chair. Sometimes people just go to the mailbox. Sometimes people just walk around, but getting some blood moving. All the basics are things during crisis that are really extra important to focus on. Sometimes they're also easier to focus on. So we also suggest go small. Do small things that feel like you accomplish one thing and it feels good. I did one thing. If I can get my coffee pot ready the night before, okay, I know in the morning I can feel like that's one thing that's taken care of. Littler things like technology can often be our friend. I know my sister sends me a text with 2 words, thinking of you, or 3 words, right? Showing my brain being kind of taxed too. But just little things, going small, getting through small chunks. Another visual is sometimes with clients or with family, it will suggest things like, I'm going to swim to my next island. Where's my island that I can get on, take a breath out of the water, and just relax and breathe for a few minutes. So These are ways to get through a crisis moment or a crisis day, or now we're getting through months. But looking for those small moments to get through. So that's the kind of focus we do.
Thanks, Natasha. Thanks for those great ideas.
Mhm.
Maria?
You know, I would also, going off of what Natasha had said, find ways in the internet to play games. I had one family tell me that they play poker, and they're all over the country. And they play it, first they started playing it in an hour at a time, and now they're up to about 2 hours. And the other generations are beginning to come in and play. And while they're playing, they're talking, and the family has to admit that they never talked this much before COVID, and it has worked out. It's a set routine, and they know what they're doing. And so for those of you who are living alone, reach out to your best friend or your daughter and have a set structured time that happens weekly where you're either playing a game or reading a book to your grandkids, whatever works, put that structure in because that is just absolutely important. The other thing is there's a lot of do it, don't do it, what to do, how to do it, and that stress is not helpful at this point. If you have a favorite channel that is kind of a mainstream there and a regular doctor on there that you've been following, then you stick to doing that and take that person's advice as you're going forward. For those of us in the 24-hour world of the news, I'm thinking there comes a time, and this is it, where you limit that. We have to learn to turn off some of our social media that drives us and stresses us. Limit it. And instead, since we can't sing in our churches, we can't sing in the theater, sing in the shower, put on some of those old tunes that just make you feel good. And so that will turn around and reward you with enabling you to manage or reduce your stress that is really being caused by this experience.
As you were talking about music, music is a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
It is, it's not uncommon that I will put some headphones in and I'll put on a playlist that is one that tends to make me feel a little bit more upbeat. And there have been many a time as well where I've decided it's maybe time to unplug. And in going out on a walk, one of the things that we can do, and to be honest, this can also be done when it's in our homes as well, is to really begin to pay attention to what's going on around us. We oftentimes find ourselves getting so kind of entrenched into our daily lives that we're not paying attention to all the different things that are happening around us and kind of tuning things out that are still very important. So on this walk, I will oftentimes take the headphones out as well and really begin to pay attention to my different senses, what I can see, what I can hear, what I can feel, what I can taste, and what I can smell. And at times on this walk, I may be blessed with hearing certain birds that I've grown accustomed to over the years and paying attention to which bird is making which sound. It may be as I'm walking around the neighborhood, noticing the different scents that are coming from people's barbecues. It may be the sound of some laughter in backyards. It may be the feeling of the pavement under my feet. But that grounding exercise, one in which we are really becoming more in tune to all of our different senses, it's not aimed at controlling our thought or stopping the anxiety and depression that we may feel with COVID-19, but it is aimed at recognizing that there is more that's kind of going on. COVID has done a very intense job of making us focus on it. And our mind is oftentimes then focused on the results of COVID, the emotional stressors of, as Natasha and Jamie had mentioned earlier, kind of being together 24/7 is oftentimes a huge stress on families. And having those moments, those brief moments where we can really just kind of take time to pull ourselves back, to recognize and accept the fact that we are feeling fairly intense in regard to whatever emotion that might be. This grounding exercise can be very, very helpful. The other thing that I guess that I've found as well is that it is important to have that structure that we've all talked about. One thing that is common when we don't have structure is that our sleeping habits tend to become awry. And early on in the ball game, when COVID-19 had first become prominent in our society, it is very common that I had people come into sessions and say, I'm up until 2, 3 in the morning, and then, find myself getting up at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, which is vastly different from what I've ever done before. And so being aware of our patterns and the structure that's necessary for ourselves, the importance of getting out and having some forms of movement. It may be doing a puzzle. It may be going on the internet, watching a video. They're all very important things to do.
I'd like to add something that I'm hearing just among all of us here is what I often hear and what I sometimes feel is a lack of control, and that how COVID has really kind of brought us to this, I can't control where I go, I can't control what I do. But what I'm hearing all of us say together is that there's a lot of control that we have. And so if you're listening to what we're saying, it's taking the control back, not allowing COVID to control you, but asking yourself, okay, what is it here today that I can do to make myself feel better? And that feels so much lighter than I can't control what's going on outside, but I can certainly control what's going on with me. So I just want to highlight that. That was really a big theme that I was hearing.
Great, thank you. Great strategies. Natasha, as anxieties and depression increases with all the uncertainty about our new normal, how do we find hope?
Yeah, so I hear a lot of hope when I hear us all trying to come up with strategies. That right there says that innate part of humans is potential that we all have. Working in suicide prevention, we do postvention as well, so that's aftercare. The sense of hope is something that we absolutely have to connect to, because otherwise it can really take us down, as very obvious. So I'd like to open up to think about crisis as opportunity. And I think we've all been mentioning how creative humans are and what we've seen already so far in this sustained crisis. I think as we look towards continuing to try to attach to hope and hold on to hope, also, really importantly, we can't forget the normal feelings of grief that come with things that we've lost and have had to give up, potentially without our own choice being invited. So many of my fellow therapists have talked about being present in the moment, being accepting of ourselves. And this is very true for crisis and the move towards trying to hang on to hope. Grief, allow ourselves time to feel sad, time to cry, time to recognize that things that we wanted or needed, or relationships that have changed, potentially there's been deaths, potentially there have been major illnesses, major changes that may never revert to where we were craving them to go back to. Allowing ourselves time. Each of us might need that at a different level. We might grieve in different ways, but recognize that along this trajectory, all of us at some level are experiencing grief. So that's important to honor. I've heard that word a lot, and I think that's so appropriate. Then too, in doing that, really drawing on this idea of history, collective history, collective hope. So when we think of all of us being here today, looking for strategies to go forward, remind ourselves we wouldn't be here if our ancestors hadn't found within them that drive, that sense of hope, something that they've had to dig deep and go forward and keep going. All of us here are here because they did those things. And we can too. We have it within ourselves, hard as it is. Together and then individually, we have that capacity to pull something from ourselves that we never knew was there. So I would really encourage everyone to recognize family traditions or new traditions, things you might see in a neighbor or a friend, or maybe meeting some new people and seeing how they did it, or finding new ways if old traditions don't explain things very well, but looking to those, drawing from the past. So when we look at crisis strategies to get through moments, I suggest we go small, but then we look for hope, and I suggest we go big. Think of big. Think of how we're all here, and we're all still trying, even through moments of grief, even through crisis, small moments, even through the anger, aggression, all of those things, we are still going. So everyone has it within them to pull that hope.
Great points. Thank you, Natasha. Maria, do you want to comment?
You know, I think it's really important. I think it was Eric Byrne who said basically all of our human emotions come down to 4 feelings, and all of them are being challenged in this epidemic: to find joy, to experience sadness, which is a part of grief, to experience anxiety, to be able to name it and understand it in our lives, and to experience anger, to understand. Sometimes when we work with folks that are dealing with depression, one of the things we see is depression can sometimes be anger turned inward. You didn't cause this. None of us did. And so you know, being able to name what's making you mad about what's going on is awfully important. And that's where journaling, yoga, meditation, all these activities can be a wonderful outlet. I also think that learning to tell a joke. I mean, you know, the other day I was going to get gas, and when I got to the thing, I'd stepped out of my car, so I didn't have my mask on. I was right there. So I go to put the gas in. Evidently, the credit card thing's not working. So I go to start walking towards the place, and I think, oh my God, no, I need my mask. I go back to my car to get my mask, put down my wallet, walk back in, don't have my wallet. And I burst out laughing. And it was like, all right, Maria, you can get this. You can do all those activities at once. Walk back in the car and thought, I'll get it another time, and laughed at it. And I think if we can begin to laugh in the face of this and see the humanness and the bloopers we're going to make along the way, I think it won't be so frightening. Just like hope isn't believing in things you can't always see. We're dealing with a virus that we can't always see. We're only seeing the end results, the results of the test, the results of the illnesses coming back. So that's one of the things I suggest. And since we're in our homes more than we've ever imagined we'd ever would be, I'm personally recommending families sit down and re-look at your whole house and figure out how you would like to change it. Maybe the dining room becomes the living room. You know, maybe a bedroom becomes a study, you know, or a place where music or art gets done. You know, shifting things around, repurposing your house so that it fits the family and your lifestyle now as you're sitting here. when finally we opened up and Salvation Army opened up, I don't know about you guys, but obviously people were thinning out their houses because I never saw so many lines of cars. But they were doing something that was really positive. So that's my thought on that.
When I think about adversity, I oftentimes think about Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. And as he's sitting in the crow's nest in the shrimp boat, you know, he reaches up to the sky and he's like, "What else do you have for me now, Lord?" And and he has that kind of that maniacal laugh.
Yes.
And you know, the next morning, the boat is gone into waters that are filled with shrimp, and there is hope, even in times of adversity.
Yep.
And so when I oftentimes, think about that idea of hope and the position that we're currently in, I certainly think about that moment in that movie. You know, Maria, as you were talking about the idea of, sitting around the house and figuring out things that might need to get done. At our house, I think my wife has been a little bit taken aback by my desire to change some things. And as I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to change that light fixture and where it's at in the wall," I think she looked at me like, "What? You're going to do what?" Because I'm not the most handy person around. But as I was talking about a little bit earlier, on YouTube, you can find a video for almost everything. And I figured this is a project that I think I can handle. And I didn't get electrocuted, which is good. Make sure you turn off your power supply. And but again, it's that idea of, finding things that we can do and changing things around. It might be changing a room. It might be changing a light fixture. But the key here is there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from doing something that we didn't think that we could do. You know, whether it be that it is changing a light fixture, whether it be that we decide that what we want to do is that when COVID-19 ends, we'd like to go travel somewhere. And so we decide, I'm going to learn that language. You know, there is so many things that we can gain from our, from resources in our community, whether it be a book in the library, whether it be a resource on the internet. But I do think that what we find when it comes to hope is finding those small things. And I can tell you from a personal standpoint, it is very satisfying looking at the light fixture that is now centered on the wall.
I would say one other comment is we live in a unique area. You can go 5 minutes in your car and you're in farmland. And we have animals that entertain us if we just slow down long enough to see it. The skunks, the birds, the eagles. I mean, there's so much here that can also give us life and give us hope.
Jamie, will you add?
Sure, yeah. So as I'm listening to everyone speak, there's something to be said about being in the business of rewiring brains. So oftentimes people come into our offices and they're struggling with depression and anxiety, and it's really difficult to experience hope in those moments. Our brains tend to go into the negative way quicker than it goes to the positive. So if I ask someone, name 5 positive things about you, it will take them probably twice or 3 times as long versus I ask them a question of think of 3 negative things about you. And so it's practicing this really shift of mindset of what's not happening versus what is happening and what can happen, as Brent's motto is. And so as we kind of honor our depression and the sadness and the grief that we are grieving over, as we sit in that, it only lasts for a temporary moment in time. And as we sit with that, on the other side of that is what is happening right now, is the things that are going great for us, is this coming together of our families. is this us going out into nature and noticing all the beautiful things around us that we never got time to do before. I see all the people on the bike paths and getting out and families and hearing the kids laughing outside and playing again and the community getting together. People, we need people and we need others. And so I'm hearing all of this. Yes, it is very stressful and it's very sad, but there's also this piece of this togetherness and this oneness that we're all experiencing this all together as one, as this collective, and how we're helping each other out through it. So there's wonderful hope out there if we choose to see it.
Natasha,
I
did you have
just
something to say?
add to that one final thing, and that would be a kind of a challenge to all of us to think about how we're going to tell future generations about how we survived this really difficult global pandemic. What did we do that could help them when they face a crisis? I know my son said to me just last night, you know, the experience I had of these shoulder surgeries really taught me I have to dig deep when something comes up. And so that's the first time over all the history of him dealing with his shoulder that he's seen it in a positive way. It taught him something. And so I challenge all of us to really think about what we're going to tell others about what we learned and how we got through this, because we are getting through it.
That's great advice. Thank you. Going into the holiday season, how can we prepare mentally, emotionally, spiritually, etc.? Maria, would you start us off?
Yes, thank you. One of the things that this committee has put together is a resource book that is online and out there, and you've seen posters in the community for this. I'm going to preface and refer you back to that, and it covers a lot of things. It covers what people are doing for counseling. It covers what resources are out in the community. It's, you know, and there are in that, because as some of you are probably sitting here and saying, you know, I can't afford to come counseling. I don't have health insurance right now, or we're on such a limited income. There are resources in there for things that you can do in your home, and there are also resources and centers where we will provide that free for you. And, well, I can't go in, and again, we are going to be setting up conference opportunities so that you can talk to someone. And there are already the resources of other agencies that have been doing this for a really long time. Why do I say that? Because holidays are tough for many families in any kind of ordinary time. And today, this is going to be extraordinary, and it's a little bit different. And so one of our projects is to direct it to that, because I think it really can help. The second thing is to really return to your, whatever your sense of spirituality is, or whatever brings you hope. You know, if you have a religious tradition that maybe you've been casual with, but you know what? I'm being driven. I'm being called back to that. Reconnect yourself. You know, there isn't a church in this valley that would not welcome anyone who was looking to find something. And so that is definitely what I would encourage you. And the last thing is, it does seem with the most recent CDC guidelines that they're beginning to focus on what we call family spread. And so we're going to have to find even new ways to celebrate, whether it's Halloween, whether it's Thanksgiving, or whether it's Christmas. And I would invite you to look at that not as a problem, damn virus took that from me, but rather as a possibility. How can we extend our families? How can we connect? And what will be those special ways? I remember one early year when we had just moved into the Fox River Valley where we encountered some serious financial troubles. And as Christmas rolled around, by gosh, it wasn't there. We were worrying about how was I going to replace that car and make all those payments we need to make. And so we sat down with the children and said, okay, here's the thing. This year's Christmas is not, we're not going to be able to buy gifts. So let us be creative. And I know many of the adult children often reflect on that Christmas because it was incredible. Some went to the library and copied a music piece. Some created a dollhouse. Somebody else built the furniture. I mean, it was the most special Christmas because it wasn't really focused on the stuff we could buy, but it was focused on who we were. There were letters. There were cards. We heard from one of the agencies that cards, the sending of cards to people is really meaningful. And so those are some of the things that I think will help define us, not as how bad it is, but the possibility that we can envision ourselves.
Well said. Well said, Maria. You know, the years ago I had, this was when I was a kid, one of my fondest gifts that I still have to this day is a piece of wood. It's a nameplate that I had a relative take a router and just carve my name on it. And I still have it today. It is in my workshop. And it is, again, certainly one of those gifts that I still have, which I can't say about any other gift that I've had in any other point in my childhood. And so it is getting into some of those small things that are really important. I know as we approach the holidays, we're really looking at new traditions, new ways of celebrating, because the last thing we are wanting to do is to spread, COVID to family members, young and old for that matter. And so families who are getting together, it's important to have those communications about what is it going to look like. We still want to be able to celebrate. We want to be able to celebrate our families. We also want to celebrate our faith or spirituality, but we want to be wise in our decision making. And so for those families that do choose to get together, it's then figuring out, we may not have food to focus on this year because we have decided not to pass food. And then that puts more stress on the family because some families don't necessarily always like getting together. And so when we look at effective communication, it may be important to look at some very effective communication strategies. Frequently, I talk to people about the idea of the disarming technique. And the disarming technique is aimed at finding some truth in what somebody is saying to us. And as opposed to kind of getting into the argument and just taking sides, it is important to find truth in what your aunt or your uncle, your brother, or your sister, your mom or your dad might be saying, as opposed to seeing it as being part of the battle. I oftentimes encourage as well people to use forms of empathy when they are talking with each other. And it could be just kind of a surface level empathy, or it could be a deeper meaning empathy about whatever may be going on in their lives, whether it be about their own emotions with COVID, whether it be about things that are happening in our lives. It's trying to connect to people through through that use of a very unique human trait, which is to be able to connect to others and to know to some degree how they may feel without saying the words, "I know how you feel." Because frequently when we hear those words, the response that we have in our mind, and sometimes we say it out loud, is, "No, you don't." And empathy can be a tool that allows us to connect to people. Because while we may not have an exact idea of how somebody is feeling, we may have been in a similar situation at some point in our life. And so when we look together from a family perspective, it is just taking time to pull back from some of the stressors that may have been there previously, and to hopefully have that opportunity to celebrate being together in some form or fashion, whether it be in person or remotely.
Thanks, Brent. Jamie?
Yeah, thank you. So, holidays are stressful regardless of COVID-19 for a lot of us. And so this does bring an added stress for some of us. For some of us, it may bring a little bit of relief because maybe we do have family that are not going to come in. That usually stresses us out. But I guess the one point that I want to reflect is on everybody's going to be very different in their stance of wanting to get together and not wanting to get together, as oftentimes we have different perspectives of the threat of COVID versus some people don't feel like it's a threat. So everybody's at different places with COVID right now, and we often jump to judgment. And that often puts us in a not so great state when we're judging somebody else. So I want you all to remember that each of us are going to be very different, and that's okay because we all have different ways of dealing with it. So if we have family that traditionally comes in town, but now they don't want to because of COVID, if you could give yourself permission to try to honor where that family member is, versus trying to jump into, well, they're not coming this year, and they go to everything else without a mask on. Why can't they just jump on a plane and come to us? So we have to be really mindful of just where everyone is at, and try to foresee it with less judgment. The other thing I think that Maria and Brent, you touched on was the gift giving portion of it, and the different meanings that are going to come in this year for everything. We're going to be closer with our close-knit families, the ones that we live with every day. And so there may be new traditions just with that being made. Maybe grandma brought over the turkey and grandma's not bringing over the turkey this year. So now I have to learn how to make a turkey, and we can, or whatever it is that we're making for dinner that year, but learning how to do that in a different way, and coming together as a family maybe and doing some cooking, which is going to bring more relationship and balance to the home, and maybe finding some joy in that. With the gift giving, because we are separated, we want to have that meaningful connection with somebody because they're not in that proximity space of us where we can't feel their energy. So we're really being intentional about what we buy and who we buy for and what it really means. So I think just to find that deeper meaning, again, that's coming through as I hear everyone talk, that we're finding in this time is just a really joy. That's the joy of the holidays, right? It's that spirit that lives inside of us. So I think that it's this wonderful opportunity for us to take and just come together with who we can and to extend our love out to other people that are not with us.
Great. Natasha?
So hearing that really has me feeling good about the holidays coming up. And I am a person who sometimes does find the stress is difficult. And I love to hear these things. So a couple of things. I want to remind any of our viewers about our crisis line, or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which anyone can access at any time, 24 hours. So Maria started our little section with, or this question with the reference to resources, and I really encourage people to have a look there. And if you've never tried counseling, being very transparent, counseling and through providers in this local area. I'm fortunate, but I couldn't get through what I'm getting through without the support of my own counselor, and I make use of it for my family. So counselors need counseling too. It's really important, and I would absolutely trust and recommend anyone to any of these highly qualified mental health providers. And there are ways, as Maria mentioned, if financial issues are prohibitive. I also have helped people reflect, and myself reflect, on the investment process. It is an investment of time potentially finances, and then advocacy for yourself that I need this time. It's actually very legitimate. So back to the hotlines, just a reminder that that is free. Those are staffed by volunteers by and large. And one benefit of COVID has been the draw of people to our agency, for instance, to do volunteer work, take our training. And these are amazing people. So when you call in, and I really encourage people to try it out, even when you're not in a crisis moment. It does not have to be a crisis. If it is, we're here to help. Certainly our volunteers can walk people through a crisis moment. We work really well with Batavia law enforcement, who have been wonderful, and other law enforcement agencies as needed. But generally speaking, most people find that a conversation of 10 to 30 minutes can really relieve some of that stress, and holiday times are definitely that. We have volunteers that look forward to coming in during a holiday every year. That's a special occasion for them. And they're there, they put that time aside to be there and respond when people call in. And I really think that's amazing. I know them, they're fantastic. So I really encourage you to try it out if you never have before. Or there's also crisis text line for younger people or anyone to try out. So just reminders on those. And I loved hearing all the very practical things that we can do for holidays that are different. I know I have most of my family's in Canada, and so the kind of renewed excitement over parcels. Canadian Thanksgiving was just passed, and we got a giant parcel from my parents filled with all kinds of awesome things, not necessarily purchased. Lots of things were made, and an old raincoat that was too big for somebody came in the mail. The excitement to see a parcel come was just amazing in my house. So just renewing those kind of maybe forgotten or seemingly old-fashioned methods of communicating and staying in touch. The mail has been great. Singing recordings. So technology is still something that's exciting. And if we stay in touch that way, how awesome that is. And renewed ideas, again, like people are saying, about thinking of the other person, taking some time to craft things if that's working, or something new. So all of those things, and it makes me really think that we can really all be creative during this time, and we are being creative, and that is just so cool to see. So,
and just to support what has been said, in the Jewish tradition, the home is the center. It's the home church. It's where on Fridays the Sabbath is shared. In early Christian traditions, the home was also the place where Christians gathered with their families to celebrate their belief systems. And maybe one of those possibilities is that the major religions in our time may begin, which they've always had that as our goal, to emphasize the home as the center, the home church, where we find rituals that are uniquely meaningful, both in our religious tradition as well as in our family story. So Thanksgiving alone might be quite different for all of us, but maybe focusing on that shared meal for those members of our families and making it sacred, making it special to us, however that is. We might, as Jamie said, walk away saying, wow, something special happened here. It was different. So.
Great suggestions. Thank you. Thank you to each of you for your amazing insight and advice that any one of us can make use of during these uncertain and stressful times. Thank you so much. We look forward to hosting future town halls just like this in the coming months. The Batavia Counselors Collaboration has created a local resource guide that is available on their website, www.mentalhealthbatavia.com. Hard copies are also available in the Batavia Chamber office at 106 West Wilson. Or you can contact the collaboration through the website for more information. You can also follow them on Facebook at Batavia Counselors Collaboration. And please, if you are struggling with anxiety and depression, reach out to any one of our counselors. Or if you are struggling with thoughts of suicide, call 800-273-8255 for help. If you need any other information, please contact me at the Chamber. I'm Margaret Perot. My phone number is 879-7134. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.